I got a request. I'm so happy when I get requests to do things online because I know somebody at least wants to hear it. So I got a request to read the third chapter of my novel Fairytale, which I was so happy about for multiple reasons, one of which is my kind of thing is that I'm a writer. Like, I'm a writer, that's what I want to be with, that's what I want to do with my life, that's what I want to be professionally, that's what is my passion and my heart. And so the fact that someone wants to hear more of my most dearest, precious to me written work is epic. In case you haven't read chapter 1 and 2, I'm going to link them in the description, and you can feel free to check those out if you would so choose. Chapter 3 would probably not make much sense without chapter 1 and 2, so I'd advise it. Chapter 3 of Knights and Princesses. Go away. I rolled over and stuck my head under the fluffy pillow. For some reason that I couldn't really remember, I hadn't gotten much sleep that night, and all my muscles were killing me. I deserved to sleep in. But sir, you need time to dress and be informed before starting for the palace this morning. Surely you do not intend to appear before His Highness in your unusually and untidy attire. As the voice yapped on, scrambled bits of memory started to come together in my head. I rolled on my back, head still under my pillow. Wait. For you, sir. The guard, the horse, the fairy tale. I threw the pillow off my face, and a foggy room of finely crafted wood greeted me. Rubbing my eyes helped. I saw the guard in full armor standing above my bed, blocking the pillow I'd flung at him. I laughed and sat up. Right, to the king's palace. Why not? The deflected pillow flew across the room and crashed into a fancy chair. A squeal and gurgle shocked me totally awake as that skimpy creature crawled out from under the chair. Ugh, I muttered, just then remembering that I had that creep following me around. I beg your pardon, the guard insisted. I did not perceive that your companion lay thither. I was thinking, wish you'd thrown something a little harder, but I flopped out my hand and rubbed the kink in my neck. It's all right. The streets of Glendor looked the same in the sun as they had in the dark, except lighter. I was still sore and stiff as a pole, but the guard took me to the shops to prepare to see the king, and bought me a purple shirt, one that would stay tucked in, and boots that would fit in a horse's stirrup. The men's boots were all too big for me, so I had to buy women's, but I don't think you could tell. He also bought me an epic type trench coat that was all dark and grungy. Strutting up to the palace like that was pretty dang cool. I rested my hand on my sword hilt like, I got this, even though I'd never used a sword in my life, and looked boldly at every person I saw. With every step, the creature walked just as proudly next to me as if we really belonged together. I was starting to believe it myself. At the end of the road, we reached the base of a hill, and the guard mounted the steep path looking back at me. This is the way to the palace. When he walked on, I shrugged and looked back at my sidekick. Of course. At the top of the hill was pretty much what I'd expected, a huge multi-towered palace, complete with a single flag flapping above the middle tower. It reminded me of the sandcastles Katie and I used to build on the beach. It was surrounded by walls too high to climb, but low enough to give us a nice view of the palace. Iron bar gates stood proudly in the center. As my escort approached the gates, they seemed to open on their own like the sliding doors at Walmart. But when I got closer, I saw an old man pulling one of them, while a brightly dressed kid pulled the other. We entered a yard of elegant trees and bushes shaped like unicorns and knights. Stones were set throughout the garden, as far as I could see. My boots made a loud clink on the stone walkway, a sound I hoped wasn't exclusive to women's footwear. We mounted the climb of 20 or so steps up to the palace, and headed straight for the double doors made of rich wood. They stood open, with rows of guards stationed beside them. As we stepped into the royal hall, I noticed the floor shone like some kind of marble. Randian walked forward before I could look closer at the hall tapestries. We entered the first room ahead, this door also propped open, with rows of guards at the ready. It was one huge room with 2 staircases branching off to the sides. A colorful woven rug spanned the floor, and at the far end sat 2 huge thrones. In the right throne sat an iconic fairy tale king, wise, kind, brown beard, flowing cloak, proud and majestic with a spiked crown on his head. Wow. It was surreal how perfectly kingly he looked. Beside him, the room was filled with people in vibrant clothes, standing on either side of the rug path. A sturdy young man in shining silver armor, with a helmet under one arm, strode down the rug and knelt before the king. My escort led me to the back of the crowd as the king slowly drew a gleaming sword from his jeweled sheath and touched both the knight's shoulders with it. Rise, he said sternly. Sir Hansak, Knight of Glynstor. When the knight rose and turned to face the crowd, I was met with a face gleaming with honesty, a strong jaw, and the clearest blue eyes I'd ever seen. I leaned towards my escort. What's he being knighted for? Hotness? Hansak is a friend of mine, Ranjin explained. He has never done less than serve his country selflessly with nobility, strength, and courage, like his father before him. Of course he has. Ranjin gave me a strange look, but didn't answer. Why are we here again? I asked. To introduce you to His Majesty. We haven't seen a treasure seeker in decades. I have a suspicion that you might be the chosen one. Oh, please, not this whole chosen one charade. I rubbed my eyes. Look, Ranjin, yeah. I don't know who this chosen one is, but it's obviously not me, it's him. How would you know? Ranjin looked genuinely odd. Are you a prophet? I snorted. He's hot, with blonde hair and blue eyes, perfectly noble and humble. Does he by any chance live on a farm and have a father that got tragically killed by an evil overlord? His father did die mysteriously. Hansak always held a grudge against Lord Grandiglin, but the Lord has always been a trusted advisor to the king. Yeah, he's the one. Ranjin cleared his throat but said nothing. He walks like a freaking Fred Astaire. I pointed as the knight strode easily down the aisle. Oh, and did I mention that he's hot? I bet you $10 there's nothing he can't do. I don't own cattle. I stare at him. Right. The knight's footsteps echoed across the floor as the people clapped with beaming faces for their newly knighted hero. A dry snicker interrupted the mood, growing into an outright cackling laugh. The knight stood to his feet, scanning the crowd for the mocker. The king stood to his feet, scanning the crowd for the mocker. What is the meaning of this? A cloaked figure stepped forward, and I recognized him as the guy I'd seen on the battlefield. Hey, I started, isn't that... The meaning, your royal highness, the cloaked man croaked, is that the princess of Glynstor is missing. I tried to get a good look at his face, but it was still shrouded in shadow. You sit here, celebrating in your royal plenty, your false peace, while your own daughter rots in a dark, damp cell. How dare you, the king fumed. You can try and repair the damage, but it's too late, he cawed. Only the chosen one can save your daughter and return power to the hands of goodness before darkness falls. The king went red. Seize him! Ranjin darted toward the commotion, as did several other guards from all corners of the room. The people screamed, scattering every which way like a rainbow whirlpool, as the cloaked man ducked into their midst. The newly knighted hero drew his sword and dashed for the intruder. I sighed. Draw your sword and run into the crowd. That's a good idea. People pulled out the door, but I pressed myself against the wall. I wasn't about to miss whatever was happening. My tag-along looked up at me and backed his scrawny self into the corner with me. The room cleared faster than I expected, leaving me pressed into the corner of the majestic throne room that looked a lot bigger now. The king stood on the steps of his throne with a daze in his eyes. He looked weak, worn. He seemed really shaken, leaning on the arm of his throne with his head bowed. I almost felt like I should say something. Great. Comforting people's not really my strong point. I cleared my throat awkwardly and stepped forward. Your Highness? He looked up quickly. What are you doing here? I suddenly remembered you're supposed to bow to kings. I knelt clumsily. Hi, your worship, highness. You look nice today? Sean, really? Rise, he sighed. I heard tell of your arrival. As I got to my feet, I saw in my peripheral vision my sidekick rising from his version of a bow. I couldn't help but grin. The king looked his deep eyes into mine and cleared his throat before he spoke again. I do not know what to make of you, treasure seeker, but I have been informed that you rode long and hard to bring us the news of the war from Vespin, so surely some reward is in order? What would you ask of me? Now things are looking up. I could ask for anything. Gold, horses, maybe not horses. Gold, power, magic stuff, gold. I opened my mouth to speak when a voice from behind interrupted me. It grieves me, my lord, that I was unable to seize the intruder. I gave it my utmost effort, but the crafty wizard eluded me. The hot knight strode up directly beside me. Good grief, even his breath smelled like flowers. Manly flowers. He knelt down before the king in humble submission. You may punish me in any way you see fit. Yeah, I added, you can punish me too, if you want or whatever, but I'm just that humble, just so humble. Sir Hansak glanced over at me with confusion in his perfect blue eyes. Rise, Hansak, the king ordered. My lord king, the knight said, rising. Who is this foreigner? Foreigner? I snorted. How could you tell? You're thinner than any man of your age in Glynstor. At least he doesn't lie. It's all racist, don't you think? I know not of what you speak. But you have also shorn your beard in a strikingly unique fashion. Oh yeah, I smiled, touching my goatee. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not Mumford's son, but I prefer the gangsta life. It looks very strange. I didn't like this guy. Hater's gonna hate. Gentlemen, the king spoke up. The princess may be in danger, and we must turn our attention to her safety. At the mention of the princess, the knight turned quickly back to the king. Indeed. Rest assured, your majesty, I will find Princess Sophine and bring her captors to justice if it's the last thing I do. Have fun with that, I commented. Meanwhile, in the meantime, the king finished. The treasure seeker shall be given access to our royal libraries to acquire whatever knowledge he needs to continue his quest. Fare thee well, young adventurer. Brandon will show you to the records. Fare thee well, Sir Hansak. Hansak bowed low. Thank you, your majesty. I glanced over my shoulder to see Randian standing dutifully against the wall, along with the other guards who had returned from pursuing the old man. He stepped forward to escort me away. There went my piles of gold. Royal libraries? As if that were any kind of reward. Whoever said knowledge is power never had to slave away for hours studying geometry. That's never helped me get a summer job, much less rule the world. I followed the guard out of the room. Maybe there'll be a map to treasure in one of the books or something. Once we stepped into the hall and out of the sight of the king, I groaned loud and long. Well, that kid's annoying, and I stopped and stared at the scrawny guy at my feet. You know what? I'm going to call you Steve. You'll remind me of home. I mean, enough with all the Besterenian maladoladors. Sir? Randian poked his head around the corner of the passage ahead. The library's right this way. Ah, thank you. He eyed me curiously, then started off down the stone hall through an arched white floral doorway and into a room glowing with sunshine. Floor-to-ceiling windows circled the room, and every other space of wall was lined with shelves of scrolls. The middle of the room held a few chairs sitting around tables with candles, quill pens, and inkwells. It looked like anyone literate could come in at any time and add to the scroll like a medieval Wikipedia. That door leads to the courtyard, the guard explained, gesturing to a small green door in the wall. I thank you, that is all the assistance I require, I said stiffly. With a bow, Randian turned and left the room. As soon as his footsteps died off, I collapsed into a well-stuffed chair and slumped. Ah, Steve boy, I sighed. Whatever this world of yours is, it sure knows how to wear a guy out. After a minute of resting, I dragged myself out of the chair and toward the shelf with the oddest-looking scrolls. Might as well find out something about this place. I'm stuck in, I guess. Pulling one off, I was surprised by the thick cobwebs that came with it. I coughed as a cloud of dust met my nose and waved away the rest of the storm. These people sure are studious, aren't they, Steve? Taking the scroll with me, I slid into a hard-backed chair at the desk and began unrolling the cracked parchment. What have we here? The title ran Terran Cas Krinon, and the rest was just as illegible. Grunting, I tossed the scroll aside and searched the shelf for something else. Lifting the next scroll on the shelf, I returned to the desk. Conscious life. This one was readable, at least. I, Dagonis, have set out to chronicle the many strange and little-known facts of the vast races residing in Glynstor and surrounding lands. Firstly, men. A strong and powerful race known for talent, livelihood, and passion. They dwell in structures of superfluous beauty made out of wood, stone, and metal. Further details were written, but I skimmed the rest until my eyes met the next section. Nethrep. Presumably finding their origins in the race of man, seeing as their physical features, passions, and diet are similar, the Nethrep have not linked with man since before our recorded history. They are gifted with unique powers that they attribute to their worship of God, and always stand by the laws of visions from their God, which consists of freedom, justice, and selflessness. Skimming on down, my eyes drifted over elves, Tunder, gnomes, spriggans, corals, satyrs. A shadow drifting across my scroll pulled me back to the present, or wherever I was. I jerked up and stared at my little psychic as he toyed with the cobwebs on the floor. It was just kind of weird and surreal. I mean, I thought I was in a fairy tale, but this just confirmed it. Elves, dwarfs, dragons? I've really entered a fairy tale. There really are fairies here. Steve rolled on his back and tried to escape a sticky mass of dust on his feet. I guess I'm staring at one right now. The shadow moved from the desk to my face, and I looked up to see Ranjin outside the window, speaking with a figure silhouetted by the position of the midday sun. The manly figure was broad in the chest, narrow in the waist, and stood with his chin high and legs planted firmly apart. Hansak. Creeping forward, I made it to the small door and cracked it open. A slightly dusty Steve padded up beside me. Soon I heard a muffled version of what the two were saying. "It worries me, Ranjin," Hansak sighed. "It's unlikely that she has been delayed." It was verified by an elf who reached the gates. Ranjin whispered to his friend. "About the same time the old man interrupted the knighting. The princess's guide arrived at Langorith alone, then ran when they tried to question him." I could see nothing with my face pressed to the door, but I heard Hansak curse and could just imagine him clenching his strong fists. There was the sound of boots shuffling across the grass, and Hansak spoke in a whisper so that I had to strain myself to hear him. "I strongly believe Lord Graniglin was to blame." Ranjin sighed. "If only the Nethra were still with us. There have been too many disappearances lately for my liking. First your father, then the prince, and now the princess." "Yes, my father." The knight's voice broke as the sentence halted, and when he spoke again, determination shook his voice. "I do not know who is behind all this, but I swear, when Lord Graniglin returns from his hunt, he will have me to answer to." As I backed up to watch, Randian strolled off hanging his head, and Hansak, after looking heroically at the horizon, walked off on his way. Dude, if I was writing this fairy tale, there's no way that kid wouldn't have been a hero. Whatever was about to go down, I had the feeling he was going to be smack dab in the middle of it. I looked over my shoulder. No one was watching. I stepped through the door into the fresh air and light breeze of the deliciously scented courtyard. If this kid was the chosen one, destined to save the world, it probably wouldn't hurt to know a little bit more about him. I jumped from the doorway to the grass to avoid the clinking of my boots on the stone path. Steve mimicked me, landing less gracefully beside me. After that, it was a matter of knowing how to hide behind garden pillars, leafy nights, and unicorns. The unicorns took on a whole new meaning now that I realized unicorns probably existed here. Thankfully for me, Sir Perfect Hansak was as oblivious to my occasional sound as a fish to the water he swims in. He was too busy thinking of saving the princess or other noble things, judging by the look on his face. I trailed him all the way across the drawbridge, then waited for him to walk through the gates before brushing my clothes off and striding with all the importance I could manage past the guards at the king's gate, who, thankfully, gave me no more than a passing glance. Once out of sight of them, I quickly made up for lost ground, keeping a close but safe distance from the knight. I trailed him across several picturesque fields to a smaller castle on a landscape of rolling hills dotted with forest. Steve, thank God, was quiet all the way. At the entrance of the small courtyard, the boy unlatched and opened the wooden gate, ambling in and leaving the gate swinging. Good thing for him I'm not a bad guy, I thought. Then I had to stop for a second to wonder if I was. Who knew where I would fit into this story? I certainly didn't. After Hansak disappeared through the doors at the base of the tower, I stepped into the castle courtyard. It was empty except for a few neatly trimmed bushes around the base of the tower and low sheared grass. I wonder who cuts all this, I snickered, picturing a guard like Randian bending over with shears all day, trimming the grass to perfectly equal lengths. Flattening myself against the wall beside the door the knight had gone through, I listened to what was going on inside. "Hansak!" came a girl's voice, along with footsteps rushing down some kind of corridor. "A man is here to see you." "Tell him not now, Evelyn," he sighed. "I'm going hunting." "I did," the girl promised, "but he insists on seeing you now. He says he's from the king." "He does?" I heard a thump of something drop to the ground, and heavy footfalls rushed my way. With no time to plan, I hoped the bushes weren't too tough, and threw myself face down into one to hide. Gah! Sticks poked at me from all angles. It was a lot less fluffy than it looked. I heard another crunch, and Steve fell on top of me. Hearing the heavy clomp of boots into the courtyard, I cautiously looked up to see if I was well hidden. I saw nothing but blue sky and clouds above me. Good thing the boy was no Sherlock Holmes, because it wasn't looking like I was hidden at all. "Lord Graniglin," the kid barked. "Ah, young Hansak." That voice was new. Elbowing my way through the bush until I was underneath it, I found that besides making a thunderstorm of noise, it also helped hide me better than flattening the entire thing under me. "It's Sir Hansak, actually," Hansak snapped. I peered between the leaves of my hiding place and saw the back of the knight. He faced an older, pinch-faced man in copper metal. A blood-red cape hung from the man's shoulders, and a saddled and bridled horse stood behind him, swishing its tail and munching on the lawn. 2 men in full armor waited quietly beside the horse, hands folded in front of them. Ah, well. Lord Granaglan smiled, a set of crooked yellow teeth at the knight. War may be coming, and with all the may entail, we need to be sure only those very well acquainted with war hold positions of power. Honestly, yellow teeth. Yellow teeth? Why do all villains have yellow teeth?
Hello.
Hello.
Do you know where the key is?
Yes, it's actually sitting right on that little table thing.
Did you want to go?
No, thank you.
Alright. Do you talk about driving?
I was recording something, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's it.
Oh, I was locked?
Yeah. But you managed to get in anyway. So, but you managed to get in anyway. I better pause this. I'm going to run out of battery.
Oh, sorry.
It's kind of racist. Or would that be teethist? True. Hansak didn't move or even flex a muscle. Instead, he stared with noble rage. Well, not that your father wasn't a good knight, the creep offered with a plastic smile. My father was the best knight this land ever had, Hansak shouted, rushing forward with clenched fists. Dude, this dude needs to take a chill pill. Yes, yes, Hansak slithered, raising his sinewy hands in defense. Calm yourself, he certainly was, and we have put his retainers to good use. He said it like they'd killed them or something. I honestly think this guy could have said free ice cream for everyone and it would have sounded violent. But times have changed, he croaked, and we seem to have discovered that this castle, well, let's just say it no longer belongs to you, and it never truly belonged to your father. Stepping forward, the Lord put his face too close to Hansak's and spoke in a loud whisper. I'm asking you to leave Glenstore, Sir Hansak. Quietly. Or I shall be forced to expose the fraud and have your knighthood revoked. What do you mean? The knight growled, fists tightening. I yawned. I couldn't decide whether this creep's evilness or the boy's noble broil were more boring. Still, I tried to stay awake and pay attention. He received the title and lands from Sir Oranus, Hansak yelled. The knight bestowed it upon him with his dying breath. I was there. I'm doing this for your own good, son. The Lord's smile said differently. I have evidence. He strode toward his horse and lifted a stack of yellowed pages from his saddlebag. Hansak snatched the papers from the man, and his eyes scrolled anxiously down the lines. But this is not the truth, he cried. These are lies, all of them. Well, Granaglan soothed. We have reason to believe your father may have. I suppose you think my father lied. The knight paced the yard before Lord Granaglan, waving a finger in his face. Well, I was telling you one thing. My father was no liar, and he was well aware of certain people trying to gain power. I shall show you what he thought of liars, murderers, and power-hungry fiends. Hansak ripped the pages over and over before throwing them into a muddy spot of ground and stamping on them. Wow. It was Granaglan's turn to be mad. Now look here, boy. Hansak paid no attention. Did the king send you? He asked, tapping his boot on the lawn. Yes, he did. You lie, he demanded. He knew and trusted my father. Sir Hansak. The Lord's eyes darkened and he looked even more evil than before. I half expected the sky to darken and lightning to strike. You will be coming with me. The armed men rushed forward and grabbed Hansak by both arms. You can't do this, he seethed, struggling with his captors. Justice will be served. The Lord drew his sword and pointed it at Hansak's chin. I tried to give you a way out. Turn and run like the coward you are, but you refused. There are consequences for playing the hero. He nodded, and the men pulled a sack over Hansak's head. The Lord reared back his sword and whacked Hansak on the side of the head. The knight slumped in the guard's arms, and the Lord cleared his throat calmly. Get him on the horse. After a few minutes, they had Hansak's limp form tied in the back of the Lord's horse. Then they mounted their own, and at a sign from their master, the three cantered out of the courtyard and off into the woods. I grinned at the fact that they had no idea I'd seen the whole thing. Who's good at fairy tales now, Katie? After the hoofbeats died off, I rolled out of the bushes and lay on the soft grass for a minute, scratching itches where the bush had tickled me and pulling handfuls of leaves from my shirt. Before I'd finished, a head of frizzy blonde hair tied with a brown scarf appeared above me, and a girl's panicked face stared down. What right have you upon this estate? she screamed, raising a wooden broom she held above my head. Nothing! I held my hand up to grab the broom. It's complicated, but you know, Hey Snake or whatever? Sir Hansak is my brother, and why do you inquire thus? She screamed so loud that I clapped a hand to my ear and jumped back. Looking to the side, I saw Steve scrambling from the bushes. Wait, calm down, I yelled. But she jumped back and screamed more. She screamed for so long I wondered if she would ever stop for breath. Anywho, that's the end of the chapter. Tell me what you think of all that in the comments below. Certainly, Sean is certainly starting to see a lot of the beginnings of this fairy tale unfold, and maybe taking it all a bit casually. That's just kind of how he does things. So tell me in the comments below what you thought of that chapter, what character, what you think of Sir Hansak and Grandma Glynn and Sean and stuff, and Randon, and what you think's gonna happen next. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, give it a thumbs down if you didn't like it, subscribe for more videos, and I will see you in the next video. Until next time, always remember that we are epic heroes today and every day of our lives, no matter what you or anybody else says. And I'll see you soon. Bye! I've got no strings, so I have fun. There are no strings on me.